What's good, guys? Welcome back to another video. We're going to get into the Bitcoin trade setup for today. One thing's for sure, we're finally starting to see just a little bit of sign of life when it comes to Bitcoin. So you're not going to want to miss this. But if you're new here, welcome. My name is Shwen. I've been making these videos daily for the better part of the last few years. And so far, we have around a 78% win rate tracked since the start of 2025. So if you're new here, just understand that I tend to be right a little bit more often than I'm wrong. So you're probably in the right place. But with that out of the way, let's get into that Bitcoin trade. So yesterday, we finally managed to get a daily bullish candle close after sweeping out this target that we talked about earlier during the week. Besides that, I think it's important for now to just understand where we're at in terms of the higher time frame before we start diving into kind of like the weeds. And so far, weekly was still looking bearish. Nothing's changed about that. I'm not even planning on going that far out in terms of the time frame, right? Overall, this market structure, order flow, everything is still bearish, and like my target for 50k does not change. I do think that we still see 50k before any sort of major reversal on Bitcoin where we quote unquote return back to a bull market. So in terms of just the overall market structure and the overall higher time frame flow, it's definitely still bearish. Nothing's changed about that. If anything, with the candle close last week below this level right here on the weekly chart, this is now going to become a huge bearish order block that price will eventually retrace into to head towards the downside. And that's important to understand because yesterday we finally got a bullish candle close on Bitcoin. But is that truly going to be the first sign of a reversal? I would think not. The reason for that is because, again, remember, we're coming back into that weekly order block. So right now, if I were to just draw this fair value gap here on the daily chart, and if I kind of arrange that and see where this fits in terms of the weekly chart, you can see that the fair value gap fits just right at the order block. Now, obviously, I think this higher fair value gap here would make a lot more sense because in terms of this lower one, you would expect the price to go like pretty much over here before coming down. But either way, like just because we have a bullish kind of like candle doesn't mean that we're immediately in the clear in terms of just the higher time frame, right? We are still bearish until otherwise proven, and we are not going to be proven otherwise until, like as I've already mentioned, until you get a candle close above like basically $78,000 at this point. But more likely than not, we're looking at 80k. So overall, you're super bearish. But let's take a look at the kind of like lower time frame just to break down what's going on. So in terms of the daily chart, yesterday we ended up closing bullish, right? It's a good sign. But again, don't get too happy. Like in terms of the immediate short term, we're still going to be trading things towards the upside in the sense that, all right, right now price is coming back into a bullish order block and we have a bullish daily bias and we have a very clear kind of like higher time frame resistance that we can trade towards. So for today, we're still going to be looking for a long, but just keep in mind, like higher time frame wise, like we're going to be counter trend trading. But just because we're counter trend trading, it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing, because higher time frame does not necessarily equate to being relevant to what we're trying to do here on an intraday basis. Hopefully that makes sense. So the trade for today is going to be pretty straightforward. We're still going to just be looking for this current order block here to kind of maintain itself. And by the way, the trade yesterday ended up just not playing out in the not even like not playing out. There was just no trade in terms of Bitcoin. So I ended up taking a trade on USD Canadian instead. And that ended up being a really solid win. Now, that was called to the Blueprint call members. Like, just a fun fact, I do a couple of live trading calls a week with, the existing students inside the program, where you get to see just like how I would execute in a live market. Because for a lot of you, like you see these videos where I'm kind of like predicting the market ahead of time. And you also see my trade setups when I take it on X, or sometimes I might post it after I take it. But what you guys don't see is like the immense amount of waiting that comes before and after every time I take an action, right? And that's kind of how trading is like, right? Real trading is just involving a lot of waiting. And if you guys would like to not only learn this system for yourself, or just to come take part in the live trading calls, like we have been getting so many results that is not even funny. For example, today I woke up to another trader getting funded. Yesterday, somebody just tagged me on Twitter. Shout out to you, Jibba. Like, if you're seeing this, I sent you a message. Would really love to hear more of your story. You've been watching my videos for Jibba's been watching my videos for a year. And at this point, he has 7 150k accounts. And this was just his performance from yesterday. So he made like 6k yesterday, basically. Yesterday, we also had somebody else passing another 50k challenge. The day before, somebody made 2k off of a trade on gold. The day before, we had another person passing another 50k challenge. Like this is just stuff that works. If you guys feel like you're missing out on this, you really are. So if you're serious about making trading work and if you'd like to learn my system, which is super simple yet super effective, feel free to click the first link in the description box below. It pays itself off real quick. But with that out of the way though, let's get back into that hourly kind of like trade. I think I've removed most of the boxes. Yeah, I've removed most of the boxes. So essentially today we're going to be looking for this order block to hold as support. Now this low right here is already a strong low. It's a strong low that forms prior to forming a kind of like big pump in the market. So we're expecting this low to be protected. Now obviously if this trade ends up getting stopped out, then that's kind of what the stop is supposed to do, right? That is the job of the stop loss. We have an idea here that price should hold. And if it doesn't hold, then our idea becomes invalidated, which is kind of what the stop loss is for. So like we're still going to be trading here. And obviously if you get a candle close below like what, 62,600, this is going to completely invalidate the trade altogether. And that like today is basically just going to be a loss. But for now, just based on everything within the system that has been overall been consistently profitable, we're looking for a long, and we're looking for this level right here to hold, because the daily bias is bullish, the hourly order flow is also bullish, and we have some very clear targets right above at 64,700 and potentially even higher. So the trade for today is going to be pretty straightforward, even just right here, right now, and we target for 2R. In fact, even if we just go for this most recent high, it's going to be a 3R trade from where we are at right now. Now, by the time you watch this video, depending on whether or not this trade is starting to move, what you will want to look for is just continuation of bullish order flow on the 5-minute. As long as you're forming new kind of like bullish order blocks, you can wait for price to retrace into these order blocks and just continue trading it towards the upside. This is known as momentum trading, essentially buying high and then selling higher. It's contrary to popular belief. It is a whole lot more profitable than you would imagine, and this works amazingly. In fact, just to talk about that USD Canadian trade that I took yesterday, this was a momentum entry where initially I had this order block, right? That was when I started the blueprint call. Unfortunately, I started about 5 minutes too late and I missed the entry. So instead of like FOMOing into price and trying to just market enter like way higher than I would initially wanted to, I wait, right? Okay, the moment you get this new order block, I set a limit there, didn't get filled. All right, then I wait. And then you get to this new order block here. All right, finally, I set a limit, I get filled, my stop loss is here, and I managed to get 3.7R. Just because like the move has started does not mean you are too late, because oftentimes what you need to understand is that every time price goes up or down, there is usually some sort of an objective behind that move. If you can identify what that objective is, and if you can be sure that, hey, not only is market structure, but order flow is still moving in the direction of that target, then you can simply buy high and sell higher. Why miss out on all of this just because you missed this? Hopefully that makes sense. So in terms of Bitcoin, like you would do the absolute same. Today is, for the most part, looking super bullish, and I wouldn't expect this to be bearish actually until that order block gets broken through. And if it does, then yeah, our stop loss will have done its job. We'll lose a trade, which is perfectly fine. But if we win this trade, we stand to make about 3 times more than we're risking here. So the risk to reward is very much in our favor. But otherwise, this week has been like amazing in terms of trading. Me personally, I've had one of the best weeks that I think just in the couple of weeks in June, I've completely outperformed what I did in May already. And it's looking like summer is going to be pretty fun in terms of trading. But with that said, I hope you guys enjoy your weekend. In fact, I'm going to be attending an EDM festival for the first time in a few years later this week. So that'll be pretty fun, I think. But with that said, hope you guys made some money this week, and more to come starting next week. Ciao, ciao.